In this session of the series on ED-ISQM1, we are dealing with engagement performance. Once again, back to the house of quality management, you will see that engagement performance is one of the building blocks there in the middle, in the blue line on the right hand. This is one of the detail sections and actually one of the most important, because if you think about it, ED-ISQM1 and extant ISQC1 goes about ensuring that quality is achieved in performing compliant and correct engagements to result in an appropriate audit opinion. Now, why was there a need to change engagement performance? In general, a lot of the requirements in engagement performance are completely relevant still, but there was a need to maintain and enhance the robustness of the standard to make it more principle-based as opposed to the previous rule-based version of the standard, and to make it more scalable where possible. And then there was very specifically a professional skepticism project run over the past few years, and there was a need to make sure that professional skepticism and professional judgment is referred to more prominently where applicable in the standards and then also in this quality standard. Generally, there was also then a need to change terminology. When we look at the overview of changes, EQCR has now changed to EQR. EQCR is Engagement Quality Control Review. EQR is Engagement Quality Review. So it's just a bit shorter. What can be noted is specifically based on the new risk management approach followed in this standard, EQRs as seen as a firm level response to identified quality risks. So it is included in ED-ISQM1 as such, and then the details of how to perform such a review is included in a new separate standard called ED-ISQM2. That is where the eligibility criteria and the detailed review requirements are included. Just looking at a paragraph comparison between extant ISQC1 and ED-ISQM1, you'll see that engagement performance policies and procedures consultation, EQCR as it is referred to in extant ISQC1, differences of opinion and engagement documentation are all also included in the new ED-ISQM1 apart from terminology changes. But there is a specific paragraph brought in under the quality objectives for professional judgment and skepticism. Now, looking a little bit in more detail at these changes, you'll then see that the requirements from extant ISQC1 were brought over on direction, supervision and review, consultation, differences of opinion, retention and maintenance of documentation. But as I said, it now addresses the exercise of professional judgment and professional skepticism by engagement teams when they plan and perform these engagements. And as I already said, it's now a required response to risks for firms to perform EQRs. So there are in ED-ISQM1 3 prescribed quality objectives brought in, and after the firm has identified and assessed their quality risks, there are 6 required responses, which is a lot, but if you think about it, engagement performance has always been a lengthy one because this is one of the main chapters of quality that we need to achieve and address. Looking at the quality objectives, firstly, personnel must understand their responsibilities and fulfill that. So there's a specific quality objective to address this. Then the new one, that the engagement team needs to exercise professional judgment and, where applicable, professional skepticism when planning and performing engagements. And then there's a quality objective that engagement documentation must be appropriately assembled and retained. The required responses, once again in the responses, the requirements from extant ISQC1 has once again been brought in as appropriate, and ED-ISQM1 brings in overarching or overall requirements, and ED-ISA 220 touches on more detailed requirements relating to the actual engagements. I've previously already mentioned communication, consultation, differences of opinion, retention and maintenance of documentation is very specifically included, similar to how it has been included in extant ISQC1. So that's not such a big new thing, apart from it being written as a risk response that is required. But what has been changed apart from the naming, from EQCR to EQR, there's a very specific new thing. As I've said, there was a need from external stakeholders or various stakeholders to enhance the requirements in terms of this. And there has been a new category introduced where EQRs must be performed. And it's called significant public interest, or in other words, for audits of financial statements of entities that is of significant public interest. It is defined in EDI SQM1. In the requirements, it touches on it, but then in the application material, it brings in specific requirements and says that the characteristics of such entities are that they have a large number and wide range of stakeholders, and that the nature and the size of the business should be taken into account. And the general principle here is that it would be entities that carry the same amount of public interest as a listed entity in all probability would carry. So it is not everyone falling part of the normal public interest definition as defined in the codes, but the significant public interest brings in that extra consideration to filter it down to very specific entities. It may include entities like financial institutions, that means banks, insurers, and so forth, and also certain not-for-profit organizations. So this would pose a practical challenge for some firms, but I believe the public interest consideration of this generally would create enhanced and promote enhanced quality. Engagement performance is very similar to the past, but the requirements relating to an EQR has been enhanced, and professional skepticism and judgment has specifically been brought in. Now you are up to speed.